Hello everyone, you're watching the At the Races guide to the Jumps preview show in the company of Barry Geraghty, of course, former, now retired, top jump jockey, and our expert analyst, Kevin Blake. It's in association with Betfair, and we thank Betfair for their kind sponsorship of this programme. Elsewhere on the At the Races YouTube channel, you'll find sections on the established hurdlers, chasers and novice chasers. We're now going to look at novice hurdlers. It's quite a tricky section to get really stuck into because, of course, you're dealing with horses in many cases that you don't yet know whether they can even jump. But there's still plenty to talk about. Ferny Hollow and Appreciated, of course, were top-notch bumper horses, and they very much dominate lists anti-post. We'll see from our panel which of those two they prefer. But let's go straight to you, Barry, first of all. Of course, you were JP's boy. You might have your ear to the ground at the Elliott Yard, we hear. So what's going on in the world of these novice hurdlers? Which are the horses in that list that maybe you're looking forward to seeing?
Well, the horse who excited me last season so much, and obviously he's well related to, I think he's going to be a big player, is Flintocsacra. He beat a good field in Kempton as easy as you like, having been second to Your Darling first time in Newbury, who I think is another one to keep an eye on as well. But now Flintocsacra, and I'd imagine with the pace he's shown, 2 mile will suit him well.
Flintocsacra is trained by Nicky Henderson. Don't get fooled by the name, not the same ownership, of course, as the great Sprinter-Sacra that Barry rode so well. Flintocsacra is a McManus horse and was second at Newbury first time and then went to Kempton. And Barry, what is it, size, scope, or just natural ability that thrills you with this horse?
Just everything about him. You know, He does, and as you said, natural ability. He's got loads of pace. He travels. He's schooled well at home. He's very like his brother. Mightn't just be as tall, but he's a really smart horse and very exciting.
Clearly, people knew this horse was pretty useful because it went off 2-1 favourite at Newbury first time. Were you surprised the horse got beat on that? Was that a bit of a shock to the camp?
No, he was very raw, and we knew he'd been keen at home. Nicky wouldn't overtrain his horses like that for first time because he'd want them to learn from it and improve from it, and he did. He ran keen and he just emptied in the last furlong. But the winner was well fancied. Ben Pauling's Your Darling, and was highly thought of. They weren't surprised that he went and won. So I'd say it'll work out a good race. But the improvement that Flinteur showed from that run to Kempton, I'd say the only easier bumper winner I've ridden was probably Sprinter when he won the bumper at the Scottish National Meet.
And very quickly on this horse, Barry, obviously when you're talking about keenness, you're kind of thinking it's going to be 2 miles, but ultimately, what kind of horse are we dealing with here? What will be the trip for this horse, do you think?
Well, I'd imagine 2 mile. He works with a good bit of pace. He's a no way slow. He'll keep with a good horse. So I'd imagine I'd be surprised if he needs to go further than 2 mile.
Kevin, Willie Mullins, as always, went to the champion bumper with plenty of sort of leading contenders. Were there horses in that race that you were thinking, crikey, when that goes over hurdles, this will be even better?
Yeah, loads of them. How long do you have? Willie, obviously. Well, look, I suppose the natural thing is to start off with the winner of the champion bumper. But you know what? I prefer the second, and I think you're actually on the same page as me, Matt. Appreciated went in as kind of the horse with a lot of expectation about him. He had been absolutely brilliant at the Dublin Racing Festival. You know, for a horse that had won a bumper over 2.5 miles. You know, what he did against the best bumper horses in Ireland at Leopardstown was unreal, I thought. You know, he showed loads of pace, turn of foot, was very impressive. And that champion bumper, as always, is a race worth watching back a few times, just in terms of where the main protagonist came from. You know, for whatever reason, whether it was pace related or that they got racing a little bit early. The ones that were up there all the way finished quite tired, you know. Ferny Hollow missed a kick, was held up right off the pace. Queen's Brook was held up quite a bit as well. Of all the ones that were involved in the finish, Appreciated was the most forward of them all. You know, Patrick had him in the race early enough, and he just got mugged, I felt, by Ferny Hollow on the day. Look, Winner's a very good horse, clearly, that's held in very high regard. Just it took a little while for them to get him right. He clearly has his quirks, but appreciate it with his point-to-point background. I'd be very excited about him going over hurdles. I heard Patrick Mullins speaking the other day. They're talking about him as more of a 2.5 mile horse potentially in the making, given his background, given that he won a 2.5 mile bumper. But I'd be very excited about him now. The winner's a lovely prospect too, but appreciate it would be the one I'd be most excited about coming out of the champion bumper.
And we've already seen that bumper form solidified in many ways. Third time lucky has already looked good for the Skeltons. Ocean Wind is unlikely to go back into the National Hunt game, but finished 6th for Roger Teal. And Ocean Wind's been exceptional on the flat. Is now going to be a horse rated about 100, you would imagine, Ocean Wind, which gives you a sort of sign of the quality. Kevin, the reason that we're going to be roughly on the same page here with Appreciated is that I slightly teased, as I do, in my way of making myself popular with people, Patrick Mullins after this race, and sort of you must be gutted you've been put on the wrong one again by Dad. And he wasn't disappointed at all. And usually I think in most situations like this the Cheltenham jockey would be disappointed with the defeat, but Patrick kind of sort of, his answer was, this is a really good horse, don't worry about that sort of thing, and that filled him with a lot of confidence for Appreciated.
Yeah, don't play poker against Patrick Mullins. I suspect you might lose, but though I'd be winning. I think he's a very good horse. He looked a very good horse prior to Cheltenham. He was beaten in the champion bumper, but I thought he enhanced his credentials. When you watch that race and you watch the way it panned out, I thought he ran a smashing race. I'd be really looking forward to him this season.
Ballyadam is another horse that people have been very much mentioning online, Kevin, who looks potentially useful.
Yeah, there was massive chat about him. Obviously, he was an expensive purchase, and I think the chat there last spring and the back end of the winter was that I think from memory he ran in the schooling bumper and was very, very impressive, and a huge amount of expectation followed him into his debut. But I think Gordon felt that the ground was very bad that day, and he got a bit bogged down and he was beaten. But then he went to Downpatrick, I think it was, off the top of my head, and absolutely bolted up. And, Gordon, I think, retains an awful lot of faith in him. Gordon has an unbelievable team of young horses up there at the minute. They've been very, very active at the sales with horses from point-to-point backgrounds. And I'd say this fella is right there in amongst with the most promising of them.
Yeah, and Barry, Malone Road, if that horse was to come back at some stage, I'm not quite sure the situation with Malone Road, but, that horse just looked fantastic in bumpers.
He did. He was very good, but it hasn't really worked out for him since then with injury and everything. But he has time and he has every chance he could come back. But I rode work alongside Ballyadam, and I could buy into the hype. He's definitely very smart.
Yeah, lots to look forward to on the front of those novice hurdlers. Looking forward to the future. I'm just going to run through a few of your tweets that you've been sending into the show. These are over all sorts of categories. They're not just sticking to the novice hurdlers as such. But I just thought it would be nice to run through a few of them. Firstly, Paddy says to Barry, JP's horses are absolutely flying. One thing we've noticed just over here, look, Ben Haslam's coming to the ranks. Surely JP will chuck a good one at Ben Haslam quite soon. There aren't many seasons that JP's horses don't win lots of races, but they are absolutely... since you've retired, they're on fire, aren't they?
They are. I know, but they probably finished up okay in Cheltenham as well last year, so they've been in form a while. Yeah. No, he's a good bunch of horses. Ben has done really well, and I'm sure in time we'll definitely have something that he can bring to the top table. But no, JP has a good team of horses, and it'll be interesting to see how they do in the coming months. But no, it's exciting.
And Kevin, a lot of people know that you've got slightly the ear to Joseph O'Brien. You've not really mentioned many Joseph O'Brien novice hurdlers. Is that because he hasn't got many, or is that just because you've been silenced by the powers that be?
In fairness, he had a real nice bunch of bumper horses last season. Eric Bloodaxe, Forged in Fire, Fire Attack, Uchtred, all four of those, and a couple of others as well, Castrovatira. He had a particularly nice bunch of bumper horses. So look, you know the way these things go. You hope that one or maybe two of them will come up to scratch in top class novice hurdlers. If you ask me for my pick personally, I have a soft spot for Eric Bloodaxe. He was fantastic in bumpers last season. Ignore his last run. He picked up a little bit of an injury that day that kept him out for the rest of the season, but he's looking fantastic fantastic at the minute, and he's a real jumper in the making. So I'd be excited about him. I know Joseph is very sweet and forged in fire and fire attack. So look, you just hope, they'll be thrown into the mix there early in November, and we'll see which one of them come up to the mark, if any. But hopefully one or two will be competitive in those top races.
And on your Twitter feed, Kevin Blake, 2011, incidentally, if you haven't been happy with his performance on this show, you're asked by Grant Thomas about Laurenceberg.
Yeah, he's back. Obviously was a hugely exciting novice, and picked up an injury there prior to the Arkle, not this year, last year. He was on track to come back last season. He was nearly ready to go at Christmas and had a tiny little issue. And I think the expectation was, or the hope was, that he would have made it back for Fairyhouse or Punchestown last season. But obviously that got kiboshed with COVID. He's in great shape. I only saw him the other day. Everything's going smoothly with him. With a horse that's had issues like him, it is day to day, but there is a tentative red circle put around the Fortria Chase at Navan there in a few weeks' time to get him back, and he'll be sticking to 2 miles almost certainly. Actually, look, you never know after they've had an injury, but based on what he was doing as a novice, hopefully he'll come back and be very competitive in top 2 mile chases.
Well, let's just remind you at this stage of the show that, of course, I like to call it a mega site, but it's technically a micro site for the jump season ahead. It's all on attheraces.com/jumps. Matthew Taylor and his team doing a great job on the At The Races website. Remember the At The Races app as well, and all the social media feeds, not only YouTube, but Twitter as well, Instagram, everything out there. But in particular, the guide to the jumps you can find on the attheraces.com/jumps mega or micro site. Right, let's pick out some hurdlers then to follow for the rest of the season. Barry, give us one that you can't wait to see.
Well, Flintocsacra, he was the one that would have excited me last season. So I'll be looking forward to see what he does, but he's a classy act.
And Kevin, obviously I've had a sneak preview at yours, and it appears you've just copied me.
Yeah, appreciate it. We're on the same page there. I know he's not exactly a real dark horse, but he didn't quite win the champion bumper. But I think he could well be the type to get compensation in something like the Ballymore Novices Hurdle next March, and hopefully win a few nice races between now and then.
Yeah, it's very hard to talk about the novice hurdlers to any great depth, of course, until they start to run a little bit. But I hope that gives you a tasty flavour, an hors d'oeuvre to what might be coming up. Barry with Flintocsacra. Remember, Barry rode that horse when it won. Kevin and myself both like the look of Appreciate It.
Not meaning to show you up, lads. It's just not meaning to show you up, just with the 2 years with the one. I'll give you a bit of help. We're all talking about the first two home in the bumper last season, but the third, Queen's Brook, who is a point-to-point winner. She'd have a mare's allowance, and I would say she could shape up for something that maybe for the Albert Bartlett. And I'd say she's not even quoted. So we're all wrapped up in the first two. Maybe have a look at the third in the bumper.
Finally, thanks for perking up a little bit at this stage, Barry. Great to have you here. Queen's Brook. Don't forget Queen's Brook, says Barry Geraghty. And if you want to hear more from Barry and Kevin, and let's face it, after that preview of the Novice Hurdlers, I suspect you do, then remember elsewhere on the YouTube At The Races pages, you will find sections for established hurdlers, established chasers, and novice chasers. And it's all very kindly sponsored by Betfair.